Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon on our Ask the Expert. Today's topic is quite an interesting one around mental health, culture, and stigma. We are joined by two special guests today, which I'm super excited about, as we will be unpacking this topic as we are wrapping up World Mental Health Month. I think it's more around just us, bringing awareness around mental health, and this is why we are having such conversations. I will be introducing our guest speakers. I'm going to start with Nkini Pasha, who is the SADAG board member. Nkini is the SADAG board member and currently board at vice chairperson. He joined SADAG in 2001 and also acts as the senior spokesperson for various TV and radio interviews. Nkini is very hands-on in SADAG's programs and initiatives, including media campaigns, outreach programs, youth projects, etc. After graduating as a medical scientist, Nkini went on to specialize in hematology before spending 10 years in the medical and pharmaceutical industry. Nkini also studied towards a marketing diploma, and during his tenure in the pharmaceutical industry, he established himself as a marketing expert. I'm now going to introduce our second speaker, who is Taz Sitole. Taz is a general counsel and practicing traditional healer who creates safe spaces for individuals and groups to reconnect with their inner resilience and restore balance. With her dual background in law and healing, she offers a unique perspective on how the whole self and society shapes the way we understand, experience, and respond to mental health. She believes that true support honors both the individual and their cultural context, and that healing begins when we listen with respect to the stories that people bring. Good day to you, our special guests, Nkini and Taz. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Good day, Lewan. Good day, Tez. And yeah, absolutely great to always engage in these discussions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nkini. Thank you so much, Taz. We are wrapping up, Mental Health World Mental Health Day, and I just wanted us to have this conversation, right, to sort of bring more awareness, to educate all of our viewers that are joining us today. Maybe I'm going to start with you, Taz. What does mental health mean to you, personally, in your work and in your community?
Thank you. So I think my biggest role in my life is not the law. It is actually being a healer. And what being a healer for me means I am ushering in elders into society. So taking care of the whole person, starting with myself. So personally, have I forgiven? Am I doing my daily grounding work? Am I growing so that I can guide other people? And then that then really connects to the work that I do. And for the community, I really do want to usher in elders. So that means we have people who are balanced, who are mentally well, who are doing well socially, who are connected to who they are individually, within their families, within their communities, and within their ancestors. So for me, if I can usher in elders, and the ritual passage of ushering in elders is people who are balanced and who've forgiven. So once you work through your issues and have forgiven other people, this is what ushers you into being an elder. So for me, that's what mental health entails.
Sure, Taz. I have goosebumps as you say that. Sure. That is such a beautiful way to describe what mental health means to you, especially in the work that you do. And Kimi, what does mental health mean to you personally in your work and in your community?
Well, personally, I think everyone who, has been around long enough and has engaged with me really knows that mental health is really one of my greatest, passions, because I think it's often sort of, overlooked. It's not taken seriously, so really personally, and this also spreads to our communities, is really that state of mental well-being. But it's not just about what is going on up here. It's really a state of well-being of the entire body. It affects our emotional, our psychological, and our physiological well-being as well. Mental health really pretty much, it's sort of like it's a blueprint on how, we emotionally feel, how we interact with, those that are around us. We interact with our communities, because if it's not well up here, it's not well, the rest of the body is not well, even to the, to your environment or to those that are around you. So really, it's a complete state of well-being of the whole body and of those that are around you as well.
Sure, and Kini, thank you so much for also giving more insight around what mental health actually is, right? Because some people don't even know what mental health is. And I love how you said that it's our overall well-being. And it's just as important as our physical health, right? Mental health is just as important. And it's important that people prioritize their mental health. So thank you so much for that. Taz, I want to bring you into the conversation. Many people still see traditional healing and mental health treatment as two separate worlds. How do you see these two approaches working together to support people's well-being?
I think for me, that's false separation, right? And if I look at my practice, and I'm not saying my practice is like everybody else's practice, I'm seeing that because it is people like you and I who come to my practice, they have that understanding that, no, this is a false dichotomy. Whatever is spiritual can also then be psychological, especially within an African context. I love the teachings of Ubaba Credo Mutua, right? Because he says that healing happens when we understand the interconnectedness of life. So that great web of existence that we have. So not only are we looking at ourselves, we're looking at our ancestors, we're looking at our community, we're looking at the natural world. And then if we look at how African communities look at emotional distress, we understand that you feel it in your body and there's a clinical way of explaining it. But on the other hand, there's also a traditional way of explaining that, which is imbalance, ancestral unrest, where we then use ritual technology to do that. But then for us to be able to really heal, the two have to come together. I don't know if you've ever noticed healers who've never done clinical treatment, that they are also out of balance, because within traditional healing, it's only a part where this is the only place where a person who's been crazy can heal other crazy people. So if we don't bring the clinical aspect to explain what is happening, then that balance never comes in. So for me, for proper well-being, the two approaches have to work well together, because one is the ritual technology and the other one kind of like puts you together as a whole person and as an individual.
And it's interesting how you say that, because there's such a stigma around mental health and traditional healing. And I've noticed how in a lot of communities, those things are separate. You can't put the two together. So it's quite interesting to hear that there has to be a balance between the two, right? In order for you to be well, psychologically, there has to be a balance between what you receive, from whether it's your psychologist or your psychiatrist, but also there has to be that balance from your cultural side, and having to make sure that that balance is maintained. It's quite interesting to hear that perspective. Now, I want to bring it back to you. Having worked in both the medical and corporate world, how do you think these different environments shape people's understanding and attitudes towards mental health?
Sure. I think, maybe let me start. When you say medical, as a medical, professional, you are dealing with so much, depending obviously on the level, of your practice or your exposure. But this generally, it's about dealing with human beings. It's about, helping unwell human beings to be well again. But of course, we know that that comes with a lot of challenges, because sometimes you fight so hard as a healthcare professional to save a life. And ultimately, you are not able to. So it's not always the case that you are able to actually get the unwell, fellow human being to be well again. So that, without a doubt, it does impact on, you know, on your psychological, your emotional well-being as a healthcare, you know, provider. And we've seen that, you know, even those that are training to, you know, become qualified in this field, there's a huge level of pressure that comes with it. There's a huge level of, you know, mentally and emotionally, and that without a doubt, then of course physically, because you work extended, you know, hours. And the dynamics that we have in our country currently, you know, for a lot of healthcare professionals is very, very challenging. You know, oftentimes you work in environments, if you just look at how our state, you know, healthcare facilities are capacitated, you know, there is so much gaps, so many gaps. There's such a huge, huge disconnect between you being there as a healthcare professional and having to, you know, provide the services and what the support you are getting to enable you, you know, to deliver those services. So that, without a doubt, really creates a huge amount of, you know, of pressure on healthcare professionals, on those that are training to be qualified in this field. It definitely affects their, you know, their whole well-being. And, you know, so I think a lot, you know, needs to be done, because we often neglect the fact that even you as a healthcare professional, you do need, you know, that outlet. You do need that support to enable you to really, you know, have an outlet and, you know, rejuvenate and re-empower, and then you can actually do more. Now, we look on the one hand at corporate, we look at, you know, our workplaces. Really, it's absolutely shocking. You know, when you look at mental health and you look at corporate, you know, in South Africa, you know, we lose so much, you know, productivity that translates into billions of rands, you know, due to employees that that really cannot cope, that are battling a, you know, a type of a mental health condition. So our corporates, our workspaces, you know, are really not conducive. You know, very much toxic, you know, work environments. I mean, as the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, we engage, you know, at different levels and different levels of workplaces, right? And really, with the statistics that, you know, that we've managed to actually elicit from these, you know, engagements, and the research and surveys that we conduct, really paints a very gloomy picture, and really paints, you know, a picture that says to us there's a lot of work that needs to go, you know, into this to empower, you know, the managers within our workspaces, to empower those that are the most senior, to start changing this toxicity and this toxic culture within workspaces, but also to really create safe spaces, conducive spaces that I don't feel that I should suffer in silence if I am, you know, having a type of a mental health condition, that I should not feel ashamed and I should not feel scared to disclose. Right? Because you don't want to say anything because you are labeled, you are called names, but also you are, you know, you are sacrificed because you might not get that promotion, because you are now being seen as this weakly, you know, the weakest member in the team, you know, somebody who, you know, and we know the negative terms that are used, somebody who is unstable, you know. So there is a lack of understanding, there is a lack of compassion, you know, education around, you know, mental health conditions, you know, to ensure that corporates can actually actively implement strategies and actions that will bring about the positive change. And it shouldn't just be a tick box that, oh, we hosted a, you know, a wellness day and that's it. It has to be a culture, it has to be consistent, it has to be very intentional. And that's when then we'll start seeing a change.
Yeah, it's so sad to hear what you just said, Nkini, around the stigma around mental health, you know, in a workplace. People can't reach out for help. People
Yeah.
can't say that I'm going through a hard time because of that stigma, to say that I don't think you're capable enough to do the work that I need you to do because of the mental health condition that you have. And it's great that we're having such conversations
Yeah.
to empower workplaces, to empower employees, employers, to say it's okay to not be okay. You know, your mental health comes first, because how do you pour from an empty cup? How are we expecting this individual to to be able to function on a daily basis if their well-being is compromised. Now, from what you've just covered, there's a part where you spoke about, our government facilities and how limited we are on resources that are available for people out there. Many people in townships and rural areas still struggle to access proper mental health support. From your experience, what are some of those barriers, that people are experiencing, and how can they be overcome?
Yeah, it's we really there's huge gaps, and this really it cuts across the many different levels. One, you're looking at our complete sort of rural and deep rural areas where you take the Eastern Cape, for example, where people must walk over 10 kilometers to just get to a primary healthcare facility. But also then when you get to the primary healthcare facility, you are not able to access all the services. And when you talk about mental health services, often those are actually completely not prioritized. So you may find that you get into this healthcare facility, but there's no psychologist, there's no psychiatrist, not even a psychiatric nurse that can actually attend to patients that are presenting, with mental health conditions. And you look even in urban areas. I mean, you look in our townships, so there is really, really huge gaps. It does not also help that, our government as well, has not really quite championed, mental health. I mean, mental health, I think, generally has been sort of like the black sheep in the medical fraternity. And that translates into even the budget allocations that, go towards mental health. And this is where then SADAG, came in to say, let's bridge these gaps. Let's take the access to the people, through the different programs that we run. We go into communities, we engage with, leaders within different communities, be it traditional healers, because they play a significant role within our communities. Church leaders, teachers, educators, because we need to have as many foot soldiers. We need to get, the empowerment to the people and really educate our people, create the awareness, but also have the help, for people. So conducting, via, telephone counseling, to people that are in rural areas has really helped, to just give the access, to our people in those communities. But of course, there's still a lot of work to be done. There's resources that are required, for us as SADAG, to be able to continue to do the work that we do. But I think really these conversations as well are just not about empowering, our people about issues around mental health, but also is to challenge, our leaders to say it is time that you really wake up and smell the coffee. Literally, with 1 in 3 South Africans suffering from a type of a mental health condition at any point in their lifetime, it really is saying that, we cannot continue to ignore this. You need to prioritize capacitating our communities, the healthcare facilities. But I think it's an overall challenge. You get to facilities where the treatment is not there. They can't even supply chronic medication, for those patients that have been diagnosed with medical health conditions. So I think it's an entire ecosystem. We need a complete overhaul. We need to really, for the government, they need to put the money where their mouths are and really start helping, our communities, helping organizations such as SADAG to continue to save lives, to empower our people, and ready to start turning, the tide in as far as the statistics are concerned, pertaining to mental health in South Africa.
Yeah, the collaboration is so important, because then SADAG wouldn't exist without the different communities that we have, right? The collaboration that we have, for example, like you mentioned with traditional healers, where we want to see how we can best help and support those who are struggling with mental health. And it's important that people come forward and, help where they can. And I want to bring you in, Taz, around sort of collaboration. What do you wish mental health professionals understood better about traditional or cultural approaches to healing?
The community that I come from, I know like even my mother is struggling because then everybody like calls me a witch and then by association her because we're not used to that, whether it being function of colonialism, all those attitudes or maybe, I don't know, faith-based understanding. So for me, I think the understanding that sometimes what comes across as mental health for us within African society, we see that as the birthing of a healer. If also mental health practitioners could understand that sometimes the person that we call the pathfinder within the family, the one that holds the gifts for the family and the healing for the family, we know that in our families, we've got that grandmother who's always saying wrong things or who's toxic. We have all those people that are holding all these toxic energies within the family. Then you've got that pathfinder, that healer within the family. And because they're not listened to, they're the scapegoat. Their function, if it's to heal the family, it then comes across as a mental health issue. So also coming across that person within mental health practice, also understand that that person comes from a family. Not only do they need healing, because if they're healed and you take them back to that toxic environment, then the cycle is repetitive. So for me, let's not heal just the individual, let's see what is happening within their family and then within that community. That's where true healing happens. So for me, that's what I would really want to emphasize.
Sure. So you're not only just focusing. Yes, sorry, Nkini.
And I think if I can just add as well, I think this really speaks as well to the myths, right? And myths obviously drive ignorance. And I say ignorance because, when you don't have proper knowledge of something, you tend to, sort of put it in that, the black book side of life. And I think really the myths, and if you look at sort of traditional healing or traditional healers, and you look at mental health, there's often been that negativity in the sense that within most of our communities, and particularly African communities, when you are suffering, say, for example, schizophrenia, you are then labeled as being bewitched. And so that does not actually help as well in really putting forward the understanding that mental health conditions are medical conditions. If you've got asthma, you are not labeled as being bewitched. So I think it's really just breaking down these the traditional teachings, or the traditional way that we raise that we've been raised, and how we then continue to perpetuate that with our kids. It's just really the knowledge, the education to empower and to really understand. And I think when you say colonial, maybe this is the symptoms of obviously, our past. And absolutely, so there's also a huge sense of, the religious, aspect into all of, what we are discussing, because from a religious perspective as well, we understand that some religious, beliefs are such that this it's not something that is from God. This is evil spirits and so forth, and that you need to be preyed upon. But when you are dealing with a medical condition, you do need that medical intervention. You are diabetic, you are type 1 diabetic, you need to have your insulin. Otherwise, your body is just not going to sustain. So no amount of prayer, and without shooting down religion, of course, it's got a very important and big, role in our lives. And it's a belief, right? But it's really just filtering and sifting through to say, this, it's a medical condition. What would I need to do to ensure that I can actually capacitate my body and help my body to continue to sustain me? So it's an educational, a challenge across the board, to bring all the different, backgrounds and beliefs into understanding that here we are dealing with with medical conditions. You need medical intervention, you need medication, you need psychotherapy, and whether you get your counseling from your traditional healer, it is still counseling, and that is it's been proven to be, one of the effective interventions, in treating and managing mental health conditions.
Yeah. What you just shared now, Kenny, around the stigma, around mental health, but also traditional healers, traditional healing. And people are not seeing that these two can actually coexist, right? In the sense that, yes, I might be getting the assistance from my psychologist or from my psychiatrist, but maybe I also do need to consult maybe with a traditional healer, and vice versa. So, there is that stigma, and I'm glad that we're having these conversations where we're breaking that stigma, and we're bringing around, more awareness, around mental health, around culture, and around the stigma. To say, listen, these two can coexist, and it's very important that we start acknowledging that as society, because I think it starts with us as individuals, where we need to acknowledge that these two can coexist, and it's important for us to be supportive. If a family member were to say that I'm going through a hard time, but I think I want to speak to a traditional healer, we need to respect that, and we need to sort of guide them through that. And if someone says, I'm going through a hard time, I need to speak to a psychologist, we still need to create that safe space. So I think it's important for the two to coexist. Now, Taz, there's a question that we received from one of our viewers. And it says, I've struggled with anxiety for years, but my family keeps saying I should just pray or go see a traditional healer. How do I balance my faith, culture, and getting professional help?
That's a beautiful question. And I think we're realizing that we are multidimensional beings, and we should not just be limited by what people say. And especially when we struggle with anxiety, right? It might be seen one way within mental health, but within African society, anxiety is uvalo, the emergence of the being, right? So if you are emerging, imagine how multidimensional you are. Church, right? That's what we would say in African healing is tunywa. Go and awaken that messenger within church. Then ground yourself within your culture. What rituals are you supposed to do to actually ground yourself so that you remember the gifts that come from your grandmother, the gifts that come from your grandfather, the gifts that come from nature? Ground yourself in the elements, air, fire, allow all of that. Imagine if you know how much we love music when we're healing. So imagine if you're drummed into your well-being. So all of that can come in. Then after you do all of that with the traditional healer, then you go and you get the tools that you actually need. When you get the tools that you actually need, if it's medication, if it's counseling, and all of that, then you combine that with actual rituals that you put into your life. Whether when you wake up in the morning, you just don't pop your tablets. You actually do a morning ritual of grounding yourself, bringing in intentional stillness, affirming your truth and yourself, right? Calling your energy back to yourself, then taking that medication. Imagine how much more useful that will be. Before you start your day, you ground yourself within a prayer. So I think the moment we have these falsehoods of separateness, and I think for me, separateness is actually the sin. Separateness is what actually makes us unwell. So if you're able to pull yourself together, if you're able to call in all the technology that you can get from a clinical psychologist, from a traditional healer, from your faith, and you bring that all together, imagine how much richer and more grounded you're going to be.
Sure. So having a balance between the two, and how you start, your day also kind of helps you. And I love the examples that you made there, around things that you need to do as a way to help you in creating that balance for yourself. And do you have anything to share on that?
Yes, and I think, that's absolutely a great question. And I think Taz really touched on, the key, aspects in really providing an answer to this. And I think, just if I can add as well, it's really more about, a holistic approach, and that's certainly what, I get from, what Tez has just, explained now. It's really saying, yes, this is a medical because anxiety is a type of a mental health, condition. And there's different types of anxiety disorders, and also when you then talk anxiety and you talk men, and I think men in general, men and mental health, I mean, that is a whole, topic on its own. But that uvalo, because you do feel like, depending on which type of anxiety disorder you're experiencing, as a man, you'll feel, what, I'm gonna fight this. I cannot be a man and have this uvalo, and really feel like my world is ending. I need to be in control, because that's how we are socialized as men, to say, I'm a man, I must toughen up. And so we tend to then ignore, these, symptoms that we are experiencing. But that holistic approach, I mean, you hear people talk about yoga. You hear people talk about, there's different, interventions. And even us as SADAG, we do also encourage, some of those self-help tips, because as Tess says, we are multidimensional as human beings. So yes, you get your, your medical, intervention, but also you need to still make sure that other areas of your life, of your well-being, is also taken care of. You need to eat right. You need to hydrate yourself. You need to sleep, and you need to exercise, then, you need to meditate. And I think that's what I'm also getting from what Tess is saying, have that me time that you devote to yourself, to really just, center and connect to yourself. So it's not a one sort of dimensional approach that we are advocating. We understand that there's a lot of, components in our existence, and really is pulling all of those, together, to ensure this mental health that we are talking about. It's multifaceted, and really, I think that is really the message that we drive home.
Sure. What a beautiful way to wrap that up for us, Nkini, around it being a holistic approach, right? And we shouldn't sort of isolate the two approaches. And it's important that we bring those together. And I think having such conversations where we're educating, all of our viewers around mental health, around traditional healing, around culture, around our belief systems, that they can all coexist. And it's important that there's a balance between those as a way to also help you with your mental health. I am so sad that we've run out of time. I wish we could have a whole hour to ourselves. But I think in wrapping, just to hear from each of you, maybe we can start with you, Taz. What is the one key change or piece of advice you hope people take from today's discussion that could make the biggest impact in their daily lives?
Do rituals for your family to ground them. We know that at 7, we are awakening to our intelligence. That continues every 7 years, 14, 21. Honor that. We know that at 11, we awaken to our spiritual being. At 22, 33, with the story of the Christ. All of that, ground people in rituals. When you ground them that way, then all these other issues can also be prevented from happening in the future. And remember that healing is not individual only, it is also communal.
Ah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Taz. And Nkini?
So I think, it's very important to really, be in tune with who you are, to listen to your body, because oftentimes, and we know with even through research, there are symptoms, that regardless of which type of mental health condition that you have, is to really not, suffer in silence, is to come forward, because there is help, there is support, and to really get yourself to be that mentally healthy, because that then can ensure that your whole, existence is healthy, and also possibly, minimizing, the other consequences, the severe consequences, of untreated, mental health conditions, and that is suicide. So really breaking down the stigma, let's talk more about what we are feeling psychologically, emotionally. I'm talking to men now. let us open up, because we are human. It is okay to not be psychologically well, to be emotionally distressed, So really, let's be completely honest with ourselves. Let's reach out, let's open up, let's get the help. Let us not turn, to substances as a way of, medicating and dealing and coping with, a problem or a condition that actually can be, treated, can be managed, and that you can actually improve your quality of life. And of course, by so doing, the quality of life of those that are around you, because mental health, even if you're not suffering from that condition, but one way or the other, you are suffering, because if your loved one is not mentally, healthy, that will definitely impact on your, well-being as well. So I think really let's empower ourselves. Let's reach out for help, and yeah, let's lead mentally healthy lives.
Sure, such empowering words from Teza Sitole and Nkini Pasha. Thank you so much for joining us today. We truly do appreciate it. And I do hope that all of our viewers found this conversation insightful. I did. And all thanks to our special guest. So thank you so much for joining us. And to all of our viewers, thank you all for joining us today. We truly do appreciate it. And we will see you next time. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Great. Always a pleasure. Have a good one. Bye, everyone.
Bye.